Chapter 6 from the book, The Meta and Physics of Jesus Christ. The title of Chapter 6 is Curbing Your Limitations. This chapter might seem to be a waste of good thought to some of you, but it is far from that. If you find, as we delve into the subject matter, that it is just not for you, then simply skip over it. What we're going to discuss in this chapter are things of the paranormal and mystical, things on the outside fringes of everyday thought, things of the unknown. But take it all in stride and compare it to this analogy. The 8th grade was the unknown to you when you were in the 5th grade. The whole idea of going to a new school and starting all over again, especially after you had totally established yourself in the reality of the school you attended in the 5th grade, might have been a little overwhelming. I bet it was a little unsettling to your reality at the time. Don't worry. No one likes to have their known realities challenged. It is all a little frightening. Church history is full of men and women who have died because of it. Either they were the early Christians and came up against the power and might of Rome, or they were the later truth seekers that came up against the power and might of the organized Christian church. Change would challenge the reality of those in power, therefore the status quo. Whether that be the Romans killing them or them killing others, still the same principle. All of this due to challenging the known and hard-established realities in people's belief systems. This reality of belief systems is called paradigms, by the way. Mess with someone's false paradigms and you will see them come unglued. Maybe not so true for the enlightened seeker, but very true for most everyone else. However, the Creator creation and all that exists within its parameters is the true reality. Humans can't really wrap their minds around what Creator and creation fully encompasses, and therefore what true reality encompasses. We can only understand and know that there is a heck of a lot more that we don't know. There is no possible way we can even begin to grasp all that this encompasses, but it is our responsibility to the deep call within us, crying out for the true and powerful connection, that we give it an endless try. For it is by the action of our thoughts that we grow and evolve and come closer to knowing the true nature of the universe and its source. Let me also say that if we choose to limit the possibility of creation, then that is our choice alone. It will in no way, shape, or form truly limit the Creator and the universe. It will, however, limit our discovery of the Creator and the universe. This is why so many things are shrouded. There have been many, many souls on this planet throughout time that are just not prepared to see into what is real. It is all a bit too challenging for them, and serious stimulation could occur which could cause such a fear that it may even overload their brain circuitry with a bigger truth. This is why I say, if this is not for you, then simply skip this chapter. But for God's sakes, do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. So now, let's look at some of these things. All that I have chosen to put in this chapter can be uncovered at any good library and very easily on the internet. I am using things that I know have tremendous amounts of evidence backing the reality of their existence. So now let us jump into the great waters of the unknown and see what we can gather as it pertains to the reality and awesomeness of the physics and law and meta of Jesus Christ. There are a great number of things on this planet, and also not originating from this planet, that are truly the meat and potatoes type of food for thought. One of these things would be UFOs. Are these real or imagined? Are the enormous amounts of eyewitness accounts and the vast amounts of footage by the public and the military nothing but a bunch of nonsense? Have we spent multi-billions on this thus far in some huge project of mass visions, all merely figments of our own imaginations? No, we have not. Look at the evidence and follow the money. There you will see the truth of this. The evidence of the existence is nothing short of staggering, yet for some reason we have chosen to ignore it and hope it all just goes away. And why not? An open-minded belief in UFOs would certainly challenge our reality and the pictures we have created of the makeup of both God and the universe. It would also challenge those who have the power over media and the power over shaping thoughts in societies. Enlightened societies, plugged into real reality, does not help them at all. With our self-centered, lower self ways of thinking and doing things, we somehow believe we are at the center of the universe. Do you think this doesn't transcend itself over into the big picture as well? Really? What would happen if the organized church and the giant institutions had to come up with answers for things it had no answers for? Well, for the most part, this is what is happening before our eyes right now. And that is why it is that a number of the pews and the seats in our churches are higher than the individuals actually sitting in them. Do you really think, even for a split second, that our own collective realities of God and the universe, as we know it to be, are not being challenged right now? Of course, they continually are. And this is all part of our growth in both the things of the spirit and the things of this physical plane. To elaborate on what these things are, these things we are looking at in this small chapter, they are things out of our normal day-to-day scope of vision. They are the beings in the UFOs. They are ghosts. They are spirit beings, both benevolent and malevolent. They are earth spirits. They are beings living beside us in parallel dimensions. These are the dimensions that quantum physics is exploring now. These things are not what we think of as regular, ordinary life, but for just one single moment, simply think of this. These things are quite real and even tangible. Just because we do not understand it or accept it does not mean that the Creator and creation takes the same position. Let that concept, please, let that concept sink deep into your mind. It's a very important concept, especially for the times we're living in. If you can believe that we are created beings and have a source that we all came from, then why is it so hard to think the same thing of other beings, more technologically advanced beings? But what is our first reaction? To destroy what we do not understand, because it challenges our reality, and it is our reaction to the fear of that challenge. Or, if you happen to be part of the folks in power and pulling the strings on society to shape and nudge the thinking, then your actual power-based structure is being pulled out from under you. And being who you are at the core and vibrating at the frequency of the kind of beings you have chosen to align with, you are simply going to keep the status quo at all costs. Again, I refer you to the 2,000-year history of Christianity. Most of this stuff is recorded, and we can look at it today. It is not like the theories on the continent of Atlantis or Lemuria. The evidence of many of these things are not dated so far back that we can no longer look at the hard evidence. UFOs are quite real. They are travelers who get around in spacecraft, either piloted or governed by alien beings from somewhere other than this Earth. They, just like us, are members of the same created universe. They operate differently from us, and they are able to do what they can do because they truly understand the laws and physics of Jesus Christ better than us, or at least differently than we do. Can they see the whole picture? Of course not. Nothing of a physical body can get the picture clearly. They have managed to harness what we are only now beginning to scratch the surface of. Can you tell me these things are not created beings? I do not think you could convince me of that, or the millions of other people who have scrutinized the evidence because of personal encounters. These beings know how to go in and out of the dimensions and how to manipulate light, possibly even time. I want you to understand that all they know is contained within the physics and matter of Jesus Christ. It is the way. They might not know the being we call the Christ by that name, but I will wager that they are quite aware of ideas like the source of all life, creator, and planetary savior. Now, what I find very interesting is that as long as I have been listening to sermons, I have not even once been privy to the mention of alien beings from a different world than ours. Given the fact that there is a huge body of evidence backing up the reality of their existence, then it is something that the preacher or priest or minister has no official party line for. The fact is that these beings are also members of God's own creation. The reason for the church's silence is quite simple. And as I stated it earlier, it is because it is a huge challenge to the current view of reality as they see it. Here the very people in the same boat as I am, namely to profess God, will not touch this because they don't have answers to it. I challenge every church and every Christian and every denomination right now to open up their eyes and come out of this pleasant stupor and openly discuss the things mentioned in this brief chapter. Not doing this is just more of the same denial of the Creator that they did not manage to fit into their little boxes and harness for who knows what agendas. But control over resources is definitely part of the unknown purposes in there somewhere. Shall we look at ghosts for a moment? Do you think that they are not real as well? Well, they also exist. And there's again tons of evidence to support this. Do you think this is also not part of the physics of Christ, the way of things? These souls are quite alive in a different dimension. I am certain that some of them are trapped there because they do not understand the law of free will and have become bound to their previous physical reality. In short, these disembodied people will not open their eyes to the truth. The reason the church comes up with so many ridiculous notions on this Very simple thing is because it punches a hole through their doctrines that they have gone on and on and on and on and on and on and on about for centuries. Namely, that the Creator can't possibly have any method of dealing with human souls dying except for immediate banishing to hell or the procurement to heaven. Or if you're a Catholic, I guess you can go to purgatory. But besides that, oh no, Creator can't possibly do anything else. They know this because they check their box from time to time where they have Creator stored away and stashed. This is my sarcasm. Apologies. Sorry, but I couldn't help throwing out a joke here, because it is a joke. The truth of ghosts is that these ghosts are dead, and it is time to move on. They merely do not accept it or just simply cannot conceive the depth of it. Whatever the case, they are there because of the laws and physics of this universe. It has to do with what thoughts they are vibrating while in the human physical form and the pitch they are tuned into. Think frequency here. It is certainly not the light, or they would be free from their self-imposed bondage. I mentioned this in previous chapters, and we will go deeper into this idea later. All of this falls under the physics and meta of Jesus Christ, the laws and physics of Creator and creation, the power we have within ourselves to either regard or disregard truth, the abilities we have to vibrate at the pitch of wholeness with all of creation, or the pitch of selfishness and self-centeredness. Let's talk about Atlantis for a moment. History tells us that during the time of Cleopatra of Egypt and Julius Caesar, there was some very serious politics brewing. After the original Caesar died, there were two people who claimed to be the rightful heir to all of the power. These were Mark Antony and Octavius. Octavius was one of the Caesars. To make a very long story very short, these two opposing people and the armies under each of them had a battle in Egypt at Alexandria. Part of the effect of this one serious Roman battle in Egypt resulted in a great and terrible fire. I am not sure on this, but I think it was the second fire caused by Roman battles to the Library of Alexandria. I believe the first one was actually caused by the original Caesar himself, but please do not quote me on this. This fire consumed what was at that time in history the world's greatest and most complete library. The saddest part of this is that the great Library of Alexandria housed a multitude of books concerning the age previous to the one in which Egypt rose to her greatness. Some of these books gave quite clear and concise descriptions of the continent of Atlantis and its influence on Egypt. How do we know this is a factual statement? We know this because of the philosopher Plato and him telling us about it. He read many of the books before his death and wrote about what he read. Some of this regarding the continent of Atlantis. This topic is of great interest to me, possibly because I find the religion and sacred geometry of ancient Egypt to be so fascinating. If you think that there is no connection between this time and that time, then you are neglecting the author of the first 5 books of the Bible. That would be Moses. In case this does not ring a bell, let me just say the name for you. Moses. Moses grew up as a privileged member of the Pharaoh's family and duly required that he study rather deeply the religion, now shrouded in antiquity of the pyramids. Can we really say that this was not part of the design of God to prepare him and to open his eyes for the reality of his own future? I do not believe we can ignore this. Look at the book of Acts in the Bible, of course. Chapter 7, verse 22. And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and was mighty in words and in deeds. Something of the greatest importance for you to get a grip on while reading the scriptures is that when they refer to wisdom, they are not referring to what we think of as wise at all. Our thoughts and definitions of wise have to do with the experience of life and simply getting smarter through the life process. We think of an old man sitting on a rocking chair on the porch as wise. However, when the Bible refers to wisdom, it is talking about ancient and esoteric knowledge handed down from the times of ancient antiquity. It is the wisdom of God, the ancient knowledge of God that was given to mankind in order for them to understand. We misunderstand wisdom today. We misunderstand it terribly. 3 wise men came from the east to honor the Christ at the time of his birth. These men were magi. This meant that they were studied in the ways of the universe, the deeper mystical knowledge of that time, culture, and place. This too is part of the physics of this universe. This is what Moses was very much adept at. It was part of his responsibilities to become learned and wise as a ruler. But what did this do to his human psychology? It curbed his limitations to the extreme. He became experientially aware of other forces and life forms that are not part of the day-to-day mundane experience. His concept of knowledge of other forces on this planet and from other dimensions was greatly expanded to the point where he knew of their existence and part of their potential. It also taught him much about the way of the universe, which is probably why he did not lose his bearing or his sanity during all that he experienced after the burning bush episode. His limitations had already been curbed, and his body was already prepared for the highest energy he was to deal with. They're not telling us this stuff in church, are they? And why not? Because they should. Shame on them. Just want to say that. If you think about this, God could have put him anywhere. But this is not what happened, as history shows us. God put him in a place to be exposed to high-caliber religious and universal theories and methods that were said to have come from an age before the one he was in. This is all fascinating stuff, and we could go on with this, but the whole point here is to show you something about curbing your limitations. Do you think that the whole of the universe can actually fit within your psyche? Do you actually think that what we see and deal with on a daily basis is all there is? Do you think that the major events like the one I just described to you are not connected? Do you even know where you are in terms of the life of this universe? This most brief chapter is merely to make a statement that would tell you not to limit the possibilities of either God, the source, or the universe that came directly from the first cause. There are many, many things that fall under the heading of phenomenon and the unexplained. Know this, these are all part of the physics of the true Christ. There might be preachers reading this right now and saying to themselves, or their congregations, now he is walking a very fine line between God and Satan. This idea is pure heresy and blasphemy. To them I ask this simple question. Who was it that put the laws of the universe into effect? And who is it that has the power to give charge over these laws? Now that you got the answer to that, let me also state this. Stop giving your God-given power away to Satan. There is enough foolishness on earth as it is. You belong with the authority, yet you give it away. Curbing your limitations of this universe can be a frightening experience. It will challenge many of your known ideas of how you believe things to be. This was not easy for Moses or the prophets or the disciples of Christ, and it is not easy for us either. This really wakes up the mind and soul. It challenges one to really go out and discover what is there and what has been there for a very long time. I think it would astonish us to see just how connected we actually are to ancient wisdom and to events that happened many, many thousands of years ago. It is also my most strong opinion that it would do everyone a world of good to look into these connections and see how it is they are channeled back to the source of all wisdom. The way the universe works is no accident. Neither are we as the human species. Understanding this as a theory is one thing, but understanding it as a fact is something quite different. We leave this most brief chapter now. I hope I have given you something for the mind to chew on for a while. Please pause your reading and mull over what you have just read. Really think about it deeply. This is the end of chapter 6. We will continue on with chapter 7.